So this is the last video in our anatomical study of small animals, and this is going to be all about reproduction of small animals. So sexual reproduction, which is what happens in small animals, is the union of egg and sperm to produce a new animal of the same species. So two parents are required. The male furnishes the sperm, also known as the spermatozoa, or the male animal sex cell, and then the female supplies the egg, or the ovum, which is the female sex cell. So natural insemination is the process of the male actually depositing semen into the female reproductive tract. We call that natural mating or natural insemination. So sexual terminology. So conception is the creation of new life by the fertilization of an egg. Estrus is the heat period when the female is receptive to the male and will actually stand for mating. Fertilization is the union of the egg and the sperm. Gestation is the period of pregnancy. It's just a fancy word for pregnancy, and it begins with conception and ends with parturition. Ovulation is releasing an egg for fertilization in the female. Parturition is the process of giving birth to young. It's just a fancy word for birth. And then pregnant is when the baby is developing in the reproductive tract, specifically in the uterus. So female reproductive anatomy. The ovary is kind of where we start. This is the primary reproductive organ. It produces the egg, or the female gamete. The gamete is the sex cell that unites with other sex cells. So in the female, that's the ovum. In the male, that's the sperm. The embryo, this is the developing young, and this attaches to the uterine wall in mammals after about 3 to 5 days. So it starts out actually as the single-celled organism. Once fertilization happens and the sperm and egg come together, an embryo actually begins as what we call a zygote. And that zygote, after a couple of days of development, becomes an embryo. That's when it's implanted into the uterine wall. And then after a while, the embryo grows and develops and it becomes a fetus. So the uterus, this is the place of embryo growth and development. The cervix is the part of the uterus. It's at the very end of the uterus, and it contains rings and folds of tissue and cervical mucus, and it actually seals off the uterus during pregnancy, and that will keep out any contaminants or pathogens, make sure that the fetus is unbothered by infection and all that sort of stuff. The vagina is the reproduction passageway, and it's also the place of urine excretion. So this is actually where the urethra ties in to the reproductive tract. So the vagina not only serves as a passageway for the fetus during birth, but also for urine. And then the vulva is the external opening to the reproductive tract. So male reproductive anatomy, testicles or testes. These are the primary reproductive organ. They produce the male gamete, which is the sperm. The two testicles are held externally in the scrotum, or the sac that helps control temperature. Testicles have to remain cooler than the rest of the body because sperm are very particular, and if they get too hot, they can actually die, and then you don't have any sperm to fertilize eggs with. The sheath is a fold of skin that is a protective covering for the penis. So here I've given you a whole bunch of different gestation times based on species. So I've got cats, dogs, rabbits, hamsters, gerbils, rats, mice, guinea pigs, and ferrets. As you can see, typically the smaller the animal, the shorter the gestation period. This is how we can track reproductive traits so well in species like rats and mice and hamsters. General characteristics of gestation or pregnancy. So gestation typically is identified by an increase in the female's breast and abdominal size. She's also going to gain weight, and her appetite is going to increase because she's eating for two. Restlessness is a usual sign that the gestation period is coming to an end. So once the female becomes restless, you want to make sure that you get her into a nesting box or nesting area so that she can prepare to have her babies. A nesting box is exactly what it sounds like. It's a box, it's a little area. You can put straw in there, you can put shavings in there, you can also use paper. That can be all used for pocket pets and rabbits. For dogs and cats, you want to provide like blankets and towels, things like that. but this is where the mother will actually go and she will nest, and she will arrange that nesting box so that she's comfortable, and that's where she will give birth to her babies. You want to make sure that you don't excite animals at birthing. Most of the time they don't need assistance, so you can just sit back and watch and let them do their thing. Dogs and cats really need to be given a birthing box in a quiet location, and you want to make sure that you do that about 1 to 3 weeks prior to parturition so they can get comfortable with the setting. So if they're in a new place, like say you have a dog bed in your living room, your female is probably not going to want to give birth in the living room. She probably wants to be in like the back corner of a quiet bedroom, maybe your guest room or something where you don't go all the time. But she needs time to get used to that area. So you want to make sure that you put her birthing box in that area a couple weeks ahead of parturition so that she can get comfortable there. She starts to feel like this is a safe place. All right, that's all I've got for you on small animal anatomy. As always, please let me know if you have any questions.